Hi guys, both in the audience, hi, as well as those on your computers and tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about social TV, a new book that just came out, and it's authored by Mike Pearl and Stacey Shepatin, who we're lucky enough to have in our audience. Just to give you a brief bio on Stacey. Stacey's a senior vice president at Hill Holliday and leads the national broadcast buying and strategic media partnership practice for the agency's portfolio of clients, including Dunkin' Donuts, Chili's, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Liberty Mutual, John Hancock, and Home Goods. She's won multiple awards for her work and creativity, including the Advertising Age Media Maven Award and MediaWeek's Media Plan of the Year. So we have Stacey here for about an hour, and she's going to start off by taking us through a presentation of her vision of social TV, and then we'll have some time afterwards for questions. So please join me in welcoming Stacey Shepatin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm just going to start off and talk about sort of how the book came to be. And I usually start this off with the question that everybody asks me most. The first thing I hear from everyone is, did you always want to write a book? And the answer is no. I'm not a good writer. I've never thought I would ever write something like this before. But I just want to talk about sort of how I got here, right? So if I never wanted to write a book, how did I get to this point where we have a book that just came out. So this all started a little over a year ago, the agency where Mike and I came together and co-hosted a conference for our clients. And what we were finding is with all of the changes and all the new technologies that were impacting television is we were really challenged with how to educate our clients on how these are impacting their marketing plans. We would go out to our clients and present one technology. We'd go out and say, we want to test this. But our clients didn't have these technologies. They didn't have connected TVs in their homes. They didn't have the apps on their phones. And so we put this conference together a year ago to really create an opportunity for our clients to experience what was happening with television. Aaron came and spoke with us last year on our connected TV panel, and we got a great response from our clients. They were really sort of excited to see what was happening, and because they were able to experience it, they were starting to understand why they needed to take these things so seriously. So my background is television, and for the past several years, all I keep hearing about is the death of TV, and it drives me insane. Because, our clients, they do spend a lot of money in television, but we do a lot of research, a lot of multi-mix modeling to justify the fact that television is a very powerful medium in driving sales for our clients. And so to hear that television is dead and not as powerful as it once was very frustrating for me. But it's definitely not the same as what it was. While people are watching more TV than ever, it's a different experience today than it was when we were growing up. So it's not this passive experience, and it's not even this great high definition and single big screen experience in your living room anymore. It's different. It's this converging media, right? So you have social media converging with television, which is creating new experiences for viewers with their favorite television shows. So it's much more complicated. As a television buyer, as somebody who's trying to find the right environment to place our clients' messages so that they get through to consumers and we get them to go in and buy our products, I can't just look at television on the television screen anymore. I need to look at this content that's been created to run on television, but now is available in all of these different platforms. So all these different things now come into play. We have tablet, we have mobile, we have connected TV devices, all of these different options for our clients to reach their customers. As you've seen, live TV is alive as ever. If you look at, and it's boosted by social media. So if you just look at some of the most recent examples, you have the Super Bowl. Highest tweets per second, the Super Bowl peak came at the end of the game, over 12,000 tweets per second. Madonna's performance was second at over 10,000. So you can see that people want to talk about what they're watching, particularly in a live environment. It was the most watched TV program ever. Same thing with the Grammys. Adele, coming back from her surgery, singing for the first time, 13 million mentions. These are pretty significant numbers. This isn't just a small group of people who are talking about things. This is a pretty massive group of people that we need to pay attention to, and their influence on other people is pretty important. So the way, one of the things, another word that drives me crazy aside from the death of TV, is that TV is a traditional medium. People say, oh, TV, traditional, media planners can handle that, we'll cover that in the meeting. And it's just not a traditional medium anymore. It's not that simple. So Mike and I look at it differently. We look at it as a new medium, and as a new medium, we need to plan it differently than we've planned it in the past. So the way we talk about it with our clients is there's sort of these three major shifts that we've seen happening. The first is that we have this instant feedback loop, right? So you put something out there and people have the ability to respond instantaneously. We certainly do, from a creative standpoint, we do tons of pre-testing before we put creative on the air. We do tons of post-testing to see what's happening and whether it's resonating with consumers. But you can also get this instant feedback from as soon as you put the creative on the air, which is very different than what we had a few years ago. So what I want to play right now is a commercial that Hill Holliday produced for Liberty Mutual. It first aired back in 2006. I'm going to play it for you and talk about the response.
I am carrying this scrap of paper that can crack the darkest sky wide open. Every burden taken from me. Every night my heart unfolding, my whole.
When it's people who do the right thing, they call it being responsible. When it's an insurance company, they call it Liberty Mutual. Responsibility. What's your policy? Liberty Mutual.
So here's the response we got, a letter to Ted Kelly, who's the CEO of Liberty Mutual. It says, kudos on your recent television advertisement, which depicts one act of kindness leading to another. I really loved it. In this age of TV comedy put-downs, gratuitous sex and violence, and political campaign negative advertising, it's refreshing to see something as uplifting to the spirit. It makes your company stand above the rest. While I cannot utilize any Liberty Mutual products, obviously not the response we wanted, at this time, please accept the enclosed check for use in your marketing budget or community service programs as a sign of my gratitude. He sent a $20 check for Liberty Mutual to use towards their marketing. Now, this was his way of responding to the content that we put out there for Liberty Mutual. It's a handwritten letter sent to the CEO of the company. This is pre-Twitter, before you're able to sort of instantly talk about what you're feeling, what you want people to know about what you just saw. We reran the spot in 2009, and now we're able to see instant reaction to the commercial. Here's a couple of examples. I'm in love with Liberty Mutual commercial that I just saw. It's beautiful. Anyone seen the new Liberty Mutual commercial? I'm not a fan of insurance companies. No one is, which is one of our problems. But their commercial is fantastic. So, this kind of instant feedback, whether it be from a content creation standpoint on an entertainment side or from an advertising and marketing side, is really critical for us in terms of monitoring how our marketing is doing. So we look at a tweet as a social impression, right? So television is measured on impressions, and we value impressions with CPMs, and we buy on that model. But tweets are social impressions as well, and the value of those social impressions is pretty significant to us. And it's important that we are understanding the impact that these social impressions can have on our brand. We can't control it. We can't control what people are saying, but we need to be monitoring what they're saying and recognize that these are also marketing impressions that are impacting people and our brands. So I want to show a video here. This is how Twitter has become so incorporated into television programming today, and then talk about how you're going to see advertising sort of following in those footsteps.
Thank you.
So, what's your name?
My name is Beverly McClellan.
But now the idea, we've got to get rid of 5 people. I've got to get rid of 2.
Everyone's wondering what Gaga's gonna wear. After the meat dress last year, we started a hashtag what will Gaga wear? Send us your favorite tweets.
And we got a trending topic for everybody following us on Twitter. It's Are You For Real? Hit us up, twitter.com/106 Park, and put Are You For Real in your tweet.
Change says AARP means that the homeowner has to pay much more than they thought they signed up for.
Be sure you follow me on Twitter so we can live chat during the shows.
Allison Hayslip here, your official V correspondent and guide to all that is digitally awesome at The Voice.
Join Jeff Probst at Jeff Probst, tweeting live right now and throughout tonight's Survivor episode.
Top 10 trending topics on Twitter in the United States. 5 of them are about this show right now. Unbelievable. And with me right now is Team Christina. They're getting in on the action. So if you want to tweet any of Christina's team directly, and I know you do, tweet them at their handles. Just go to @NBCTheVoice/artist.
In his book, The Comedians, set in the Papa Doc era Haiti of the 60s, Graham Greene's ambivalent hero describes the Trianon Hotel he's returning to.
Been just about 1.3 million VMA-related tweets since the pre-show began. Lady Gaga is the top artist on our Twitter tracker with 1,200 tweets per minute, but Justin Bieber is not far behind with over 900.
If you want to vote for any of the acts tonight using Twitter, go to twitter.thexfactorusa.com.
Hey guys, it's time for late night hashtags. Here we go. I'm just gonna stay home and watch The Bachelor and try to find all the chicks that get kicked off on Facebook.
So we've been keeping track of your tweets. You've been talking up the judges, an absolute storm. Take a look at this. Oh, it seems that L.A. Reid is the most popular judge at the moment.
Can I first of all ask for a recount, please? Because that doesn't sound right to me. Irritating. Okay, start tweeting me, please. Okay.
So you can see the impact that social media is having on television, right? It's part of the storyline. It gives you an opportunity to talk about what you're seeing. You can vote via Twitter. You can get content from Twitter as they do on the NBC late night talk shows. It's become a huge piece of the content of a show. And so what I think you're going to see is advertisers following in those footsteps. And so what I want to show you next is an example that I think is a pretty good way of how an advertiser has incorporated Twitter, social media into their campaigns successfully. And I think, this doesn't work for every brand. It's really, we're not saying that, every brand should have a hashtag on their creative and every brand should be doing something like this. But here's an example of Wheat Thins, probably not a high interest brand that people are talking about a lot. But they were pretty successful with this campaign, and we'll talk a little bit about what the results were.
This is Chris Macho. He tweeted, "Had a hunch today would be good, but didn't think it would be this good. Wheat Thins is now following me on Twitter."
Chris? Yeah. You remember when you tweeted, "Had a hunch today would be good, but didn't think it would be this good"?
Wheat Thins is now following me on Twitter.
Yeah.
We made your day once. I have a hunch we're gonna make your day again today. We have this for you. Guy's gonna be driving around town all day today.
Look at that.
Hey America, do the right thing. Follow Chris Macho.
Follow Chris Macho on Twitter. He's awesome.
So it's great. Chris tweeted something about Wheat Thins. Wheat Thins started following him, and Chris Macho, who here is mentions in red is Chris, and Wheat Thins mentions prior to this creative running. Nobody knew who Chris was before, right? Well, look at those spikes. Once they started airing this commercial, Chris became famous. But at the same time, people started talking about Wheat Thins, and they weren't talking about them before, and most of it was all really positive. So this is a way for them to incorporate social media into getting some good positive exposure for the brand. So we look at the back channel, and it's not just Twitter. I'm focusing on Twitter just because a lot of what the television shows are doing are using Twitter, but all of the back channel is really a heartbeat of what's going on with TV. It gives you an opportunity to see what people are talking about, what's resonating with them, both positively and negatively. And the Grammys is a really good example. So, while we do see a lot of correlation with high ratings and a lot of Twitter mentions, that doesn't mean that correlation exists for everything. And when you see sort of a very heartfelt, emotional moment in television, or a show that requires you to really pay attention and not be distracted during it, you tend to see those Twitter mentions go down, even though ratings are high. So what we did here is the blue line is Twitter mentions. So you can see some of those peaks here. That first peak is when Chris Brown performed. That last peak at the end was Adele's win for Album of the Year. And you can see in most of those cases, and also the one in the middle where Adele took the stage for the first time after her surgery and sang, you know, that was the highest rated point in the show, and one of the highest points in Twitter mentions. But what's also interesting here is when Jennifer Hudson sang her tribute to Whitney Houston, it's one of the highest rated points in the show, but we saw a dip in Twitter mentions because it obviously was a moment where people were really engaged with what was going on and they wanted to pay attention to Jennifer Hudson on stage. So we don't want to be too broad and say that, okay, if it's a show and everybody's talking about it, then that's a successful show, because it's not the case. There's certainly programs out there where people are not talking about it during those shows. It also is an opportunity to tell you when something's not going right in a show. So this is an example from the Emmys last year. I don't know how many of you saw this, but the Emmy tones were these little interstitial songs that were being sung throughout, and the Twitter mentions were universally negative, right? So here's an opportunity for a producer to say, oh my God, this is not working. This is a live show. They could have pulled these guys right off the air. So that instant feedback can really guide you and give you some important feedback and impact the content of your programming. The second piece is interactivity. So the idea of interacting both on television and on secondary screens is not new. It's been around since, this is an example from 1996 with web TV. But there are just so many more options to interact with programming. So this is an example of the Super Bowl in Mike's living room. He's got his TV open, his iPad with Into Now up there. He's got his mobile device, and his computer is following the brand bowl to see which commercials are winning and which aren't. There's lots of different ways to connect with programming today, and it's very distracting, there's no doubt about it. And it's also so fragmented, right? It would be really easy if we knew that everybody that wasn't paying attention in a commercial break on TV was going to the same place on their phone, and then, we would just reach them there, right? But there's just so many distractions. But it's a really good example of how we experience TV today. So we look at TV and think of TV as more of a cross-channel experience. It's not just the experience of watching TV on the big screen, but there's more ways to experience the programming. So 40% of web owners use their phone daily while watching TV, so you assume these 40% of people are distracted from our television messages because most likely they're turning away during those commercial breaks rather than during the programming. So from a marketer's standpoint, if we know 40% of our audience is distracted, we need to figure out a way to market to those people so that our message is getting through to them. So is it hurting advertising? Of course it's hurting advertising, without a doubt. So what we did at Hill Holliday is we commissioned a study, and we wanted to see if there was a way for us to build back recall and preference for a commercial by doing something in the digital environment. So we went in with the questions, would you recommend it to your friends? We showed them clips of the movie trailer, Friends with Kids. Would you watch it yourself, and can you recall key facts from the trailer? And so our methodologies, we had 3 test groups. We did a simulation of a 2-screen experience. So one group only saw the commercial on the primary screen. They did not have a secondary device in their hand. The second group saw the commercial on the TV screen and had a secondary device, but saw a different creative when they went on to their secondary device during the commercial break. And the third group saw the commercial on the TV and then saw a synced ad, so the same creative or creative messaging on their secondary device when they were distracted from the main screen. And what we found is, obviously the group that didn't have any distraction, that only saw the commercial on the primary screen and was not distracted with a secondary device, had the highest recall and the highest preference. In the second group that was distracted and saw different creative, the recall and preference dropped 8% and 17% respectively. And then in that third group where they saw a synced ad, so a Friends with Kids ad on their secondary device while it was playing on the main screen, that recall and preference went back up almost to the levels of that primary screen group. So what that tells us is we need to find a way to market to this group that's distracted from the TV screen. And the challenge with that is like I said before, they're not all in the same place. Some of them are on their emails, some of them are doing companion content to what they're watching on TV, but they're in a lot of different places. And so we're working now to figure out what are those places and where do we need to be and how can we create that messaging so that our message is getting through. So we're fighting for attention, and we'll continue to figure out how to get through with all these distractions. The third piece is portability. So the idea of TV everywhere. There's so many different devices. You can get your content on your main screen, on your computer, on your phone, on your tablet, through apps, and all different kinds of sites. So your TV everywhere is something that we have to contend with as well. This is an example of the Xfinity iPad app. It basically acts as your remote control. You can switch channels from it. You can get recommendations from friends. You can try out new programming. It really is a control over your whole television experience, and is starting to bring some of these capabilities together. You can just click on, they'll show you top picks, so you're getting it sorted by what people are watching, what people think is great that's out there, so it gives you a chance to sample new programming. So with all these things out there, we think it's important that TV not be considered a traditional medium, that it's considered a new medium, and that you really need to plan it and market it differently than we have in the past. And so that's why we wrote the book. We wrote the book as a guide for marketers because there were so many questions on how to navigate this space. And when you look at the sort of literal definition of social TV, it's the convergence of social media with television. But social TV has sort of become a catch-all for all technologies and all things that are impacting television. And we get into a lot of that in the book. There's chapters in there on the back channel, on bridge content, on social TV guides, on addressable TV, all the things that are providing new marketing opportunities for our clients. And so the process of going through writing the book, we interviewed 75 people for the book from over 50 companies. And the process here, so the challenge that we were faced with is this space was changing so rapidly, is how could we capture it without it being dated? So we had to write it pretty quickly and get it out quickly. We wanted to launch it at our TV Next event, which we knew was going to be in February of 2012. But I also do all the upfront negotiations for the agency and couldn't handle taking this on while I was in the middle of those upfront negotiations. So we were sort of limited in that we really couldn't start until the end of July. So from July to the end of August, we interviewed all of these people for the book. We did all of the research. At the end of August, we started writing, and we had to have the manuscript done at the end of October. So we had basically we're at one chapter a week for 10 weeks. And what that is a 14-page paper every week. So now back to, did I ever want to write a book? Writing a 14-page paper every week for 10 weeks in a row is a huge challenge, but a great learning experience. And, for me was really sort of the ability to do something I never thought I could do has been a great experience for me. So the end of the book, there's 10 chapters in the book, and we held the chapter 11 to write closer to the book release because we knew there would be more to say, and we wanted to make it as relevant as we could. So chapter 11 was written in January. It's only available online. Every chapter ends with a QR code. You can scan each chapter and you can get more information on the case studies that we talk about in the book, updates. So for example, in chapter 7, which is about addressable TV and interactive TV, there is an update, if you scan it, about Canoe no longer being in the interactive TV business. So we're doing our best to keep it as up to date as possible, but like I said, things are changing so rapidly. But in chapter 11, we talk about a new planning model. So, one of the next questions we get is, okay, all this stuff is going on, and how is that changing your job? What are you doing differently? So Mike and I worked on this new planning model, and we call it our WATCH model. And basically, there's sort of 5 key things that we look at. And the first is widening our inputs. So from a TV perspective, we use Nielsen and MRI and Simmons and have used them for years as the source to figure out where is our target watching and where should we be advertising. But now there's so many more data points out there that we need to take into consideration as we're looking at what programs we should be buying for our clients. But this isn't easy, right? So it costs a lot of money to buy into all of these research companies. So it's challenging, but we're doing our best to evaluate all of the different research companies that are out there to make sure that we are understanding where our targets are and where these influential people are. Because as I talked about before, we've been buying on impressions in television for years. But social impressions and the impact that social impressions can have on your brand are probably more valuable. They're smaller in number, but they're very valuable, and we need to know who those people are, and what they're saying about us, and how we can market appropriately to them. The second one is being able to adjust in real time. So my examples from a content standpoint, from a television programming, is we're getting this instant feedback. We need to make sure that we're flexible enough on the agency side to be able to react to it. So whether that's changing things creatively or moving units from certain shows to others, we need to make sure that we're structured in a way that we can react that way. And we're working on it. I think that we're set up more and more, and clients understand that they're going to get this feedback instantly, and they're going to need to make decisions more quickly. So we're working on being able to do that as well. The third is teaming up, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's pretty important, and that is that all of the departments need to work more closely together, not just within media, not just digital and TV and planning, but creative and production need to be part of the mix as well. And so, we're structured, Hill Holliday is a fully integrated agency, so we're structured in a way that this is easier because we're all in the same building, but we also have clients where we're media only, and we need to work with other agencies, and we need to make sure that this happens, because when we find that all of the teams are working together and the creative is part of the media decisions from the beginning and media is involved when creative's being developed, that ultimately we have a much stronger program in the end. Converging media is really about thinking about television as this cross-channel experience, that in planning television and planning television GRPs, we're not just planning for the TV screen. So that as we're looking at it, we're really looking at all of these other environments as part of the TV experience, because people are experiencing TV across platforms, not just on one platform. And finally is content, and making sure that everybody focuses on content first, because no matter what great, cool technology is developed, if the initial content is not good, then people aren't going to want to do all these other things around it. They're not going to want to play games around it. They're not going to want to talk about it. They're not going to want to sync up and get cool information about it. All that stuff just doesn't matter. So we want to make sure that the content comes first, both from the programming side and even from the agency side when we're creating campaigns for our clients. We're always thinking about what are the new things that we could be doing, but ultimately the creative messaging in that has to be right first. So what have I learned from the book? This is the second most popular question, so I put it at the end to lead into the questions you might ask. Relationships do matter. I'm sure you hear this a lot, but I've been doing this for over 20 years, and the access that Mike and I got to people to understand their vision of the media business was really important. And you get very different visions from different people you talk to, from big media companies to small startups, and where they see their place in this business. So building those relationships over the years was really important. Also, curiosity is important. So one of the things, have been a television specialist, and Mike is a social media guy. That's his background. But the curiosity to understand this business in a broader way. You need to have broader business knowledge. You can't just know one thing anymore. But then on the same token, that one person can't know everything, right? But you need to understand this business more broadly, and it's important that the people you hire and the people that we hire at the agency have the curiosity and the desire to want to know more. And you can't be territorial. This one is, every time I talk to people about, how are you and Mike working together? Like, we have so many struggles with TV and digital people working together, and you can't be territorial. The one thing I will say is Mike is one of the few digital people who I've met who is really passionate about TV. There's no chip on his shoulder that digital's better than TV, and vice versa, that TV is better than digital. And we really need to make sure we're forging these relationships both at the agency side and on the media company side, that the groups are all working together. And we say it a lot, and it's easy to say, and it makes total sense, but it actually happening is not easy. And I think the reason why Mike and I have been successful in doing this over the last year or so is because we just work really well together, and recognize that I couldn't have done this on my own, and he couldn't have done this on his own, but together we were able to really create something that we think has value to our clients. Still a few challenges ahead. There's been a lot of experimentation in this space over the last year, and there will continue to be experimentation. Most of the experimentation is on the content creator side and what kind of things should they be creating in this space. Some advertisers have come in and done some interesting sponsorships of this content. And I think you'll see a little bit more of that. But the experimentation isn't going to last forever. If we can't prove that this stuff is working for our clients, there's only so much money they're going to put behind it. So we need to make sure that we build the right measurement plans into all of these deals that we're creating. And the other thing is messaging and making sure that we have the right messaging for the different platforms. So we can't just take our TV creative and run it online and take pieces of it and shorten it. So making sure, which is why the creatives need to be involved from the very beginning, is if we're recommending all these platforms for our clients, then they creatively need to be making sure that they're building what they should be for those platforms. So those, I think, are the shifts you're going to see over the next year. Thank you for coming and listening. I'm happy to sit down and answer some questions if you have any.
Yeah, just so that you guys know, for here in the audience, there are mics in the back. But for those of you that are either out of this room or don't want to stand up at a mic, you can go to a Tricks page, social space TV space questions, and input your questions there, and we can answer them. But coming out of that, and I'm just going to kickstart some stuff off, with the fact that there are so many different opportunities now, and so many media companies have so many opportunities for you as an agency to take a look at. How do you like media companies to approach you? As a total bundle or one-off?
Bundle. It's a lot easier for us to evaluate it if it's all together. It's much more challenging and much more time consuming for us to try and negotiate every single deal separately. So if we're doing a deal with NBC and we want to look at check-ins and all other kinds of things, it would be great if NBC came to us with a platform that was television plus GetGlue plus Vigil plus what they're doing on whichever website, whichever show that it is, so that we can evaluate it as a total platform.
Okay, and part and parcel to that, when you as an agency don't have everything and you're working with other agencies, how do you manage that? How does it work? Who takes the lead?
I think we have to work together. So if we're putting a plan together with another agency, a media plan for our clients, the idea could come through either through a digital group or through a TV group, but we have to figure out how to work together to negotiate it. So that's where sort of that territorial piece I talked about comes into play, is you really can't be territorial in a situation like that. Our clients don't want us to be and get frustrated when we are. They just want us to figure it out. So the lead tends to come from either where the idea came from or where the bulk of the money is, and that tends to drive the negotiation.
Okay. Do I have some questions from the audience there?
To see these lights.
Anybody? Anyone out there? Here we go.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the study that you did where people who saw complimentary ads online while they were watching TV, the brand recall was almost as high as it was undistracted.
Yeah.
Have you seen any examples of advertisers that are doing that well or have it implemented?
So I think it's just starting. So we're working with some companies in the synced ad space. So Second Screen Networks is one of the companies that's out there that Hill Holliday is a partnership with. They're part of our Beacon program, which is a program for startups where we help guide them and test out their technologies and hopefully find ways to sell them through to our clients. So Second Screen is a company that's building an ad network to try and create this synced ad experience. They've done some stuff, I think it was with Lincoln Mercury, with one of the NBC cable networks. That was pretty successful. So I think as we're doing some testing to see if this environment works, you'll see more stuff happening in this space.
And so I come from the agency side as well. So how are you allocating budgets between, and I know not to be territorial, but is that a joint budget or is it TV budget or digital budget?
I get asked that question a lot. It's sort of, we have a budget, and we may have a TV budget and a digital budget, and as we're working through these plans, we sort of figure it out as we go along, whether it's going to come out of the TV budget or the digital budget. It depends what's part of the deal. So if it's full episode player or digital video, it tends to come out of the TV budget. If it's some of these other things, it may come out of the digital budget. But we try not to keep the budget so siloed, so that we have the opportunity to evaluate plans like this and we have the money to be able to do it. It also helps to try and build these plans before the budgets are allocated so that we can go to the client and say, this is what we want to do, and it just sort of gets taken out of the overall budget. Someone at the mic.
Yeah.
Hi, Stacey. I'm Mark.
Hi.
I have a variation of the same question.
Yep.
I've noticed a lot of programs are now inviting their viewers to go to their website and download a synchronized application. I was watching The Walking Dead on Sunday, and for a couple of episodes now, they've invited you to do a sort of story sync.
Yep.
Which of the either programs or networks are doing that most effectively from an advertiser perspective, like the ones that are most advertiser friendly?
Yep, I would say the NBCU cable networks and the AMC are probably doing the most in that space right now and have had the most success from an advertiser standpoint. And, again, I talked before about there's some programs that lend themselves to this better than others. So just because a network isn't doing it well may mean that they just don't have the right programming to do this with. So Walking Dead has a very cult following. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with zombies and, that kind of stuff. And Bravo has, all kinds of reality programming that lends itself to companion content. They have digital storytelling now, their whole transmedia play that is bringing people back onto the show. So I think their programming lends itself well, and they've been experimenting a lot in this area, and they've probably been the most successful to date.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question back there with Aaron. And if you have questions, please go to the mics just so that they can be recorded.
Hi, Stacey. There's a lot of data, a lot of publicity around the number of tweets around certain ads, certain programs, et cetera. And then sometimes you hear some mention about sentiment, whether it was positive or negative. Have you seen much evidence that the data that goes beyond that is of high quality? So, for example, can you tell from the tweets, demographics or interests, things like that? Have you seen that sort of data? What is the quality of that data? And I guess my second question would be, do you feel like there's any sort of bias among the people that are tweeting that you have to sort of discount when you're analyzing this information?
Yeah, so Bluefin's done a lot with sentiment, and sentiment's hard to measure. We did some testing with them and found that things weren't allocated correctly to positive or negative sentiment. So I think you have to really look at that stuff closely. But there are a lot of these algorithms that are being built that are getting at stuff that's pretty valuable to us. That the male-female of who's tweeting. Age, general. So I think we are getting more specifics about who those people are. I mean, I think we know that the people who are tweeting are not the majority, right? They're not as large of an audience as what we're getting on TV, but they're pretty influential. We don't really know how many people they're really reaching with what they're saying, but we have to pay close attention to it because they have a pretty powerful impact on our brands, right? If they're talking about our brands and they are saying great things and saying, oh, you should try it, that's somebody who's sought out, and these social impressions, that's a pretty valuable thing. So we want to create environments where people can have that kind of conversation about our brands. But I think there's still more to learn. We don't know everything about who those people are who are tweeting. And it is hard to filter out some of the stuff you're talking about.
Question over here.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
I read a quote this morning, Mark Pritchard of P&G, talking about the importance of building one-on-one relationships with customers around the globe, and essentially pointing towards a trend of spending less on broadcast and more on mobile and social. And I'm just curious to what extent, obviously they are a global brand or have a number of global brands, but are you seeing that pressure from people, really shifting heavily on the budgets towards mobile and social?
I wouldn't say shifting heavily. I mean, P&G is a huge brand with huge budgets that has the opportunity to shift a little and not have a major impact. I definitely see the need. I mean, as more people are using these different devices, then we need to find ways to market to them appropriately in those devices. So the more people who have mobile phones and are using mobile phones to transact and go to stores and do all these things, then we need to find ways to market to them there. So you will be seeing more dollars shifting in that area. And social as well. I mean, all the things we're talking about, there's just more ways to reach your audience in social, and they're powerful people that we need to reach. So you will see some shift. I don't know that when you say major, I don't know that you're going to see 20% shifts, 25% shifts in dollars, but you are going to see some dollars moving in that area.
Back over here.
Hi. Beyond Twitter and Facebook, have you seen other social platforms being utilized effectively by programmers and advertisers, the Foursquares, the Pinterest, the Instagrams of the world?
Yeah, I haven't seen. Pinterest is probably something we should watch because I think you're going to see more with it now. Definitely like the Get Glues and Misos and Into Nows and all the check-ins, I think are being used in a good way. Get Glue has done has a lot of relationships with the networks, and they're doing some really interesting things with retailers and offers. So I think we've seen some success in that area. And I think we talk about Twitter just because it's easier for us to measure and follow Twitter, right? So, we probably talk about them more, even though there's more people on Facebook, fans of all of these shows, but we just don't have as much information about them. Those are the two dominant ones, but there's definitely others that are having impact.
Back here.
Yeah, kind of going off that, we're talking about bringing social data into the television experience, but is there kind of a reverse of the television experience coming into social, like partnering with Time Warner Cable and almost doing like a user match, like, we know this person is watching such and such right now, why are we not syncing up ads with that? So is there experimentation going on with that, or what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that we're seeing, or the big need that we're seeing across, is the need for single source measurement. So the ability to be able to measure all media in a way that it's comparable. So, television measurement and impressions have been around for a really long time, the CPMs and GRPs, and moving towards that in these other spaces is probably the place where you see we're trying to sync up as most. There's definitely testing going on in that space. I'm not familiar with any particular example, but I definitely think you'll see some testing in that area.
Back here.
In an example of combining old technology and new technology, I'm asking for a friend who just can't seem, my friend Elliot, who can't seem to find the document to ask. So forgive me if I'm losing the question in translation. But Elliot was curious to know that as you talk about shifting budgets, is this interesting to clients because it's social, or because this is digital with measurement, in essence, a digital layer applied to a television, which traditionally doesn't offer the degree of granular measurement that digital sometimes does? Is the future demanding social elements as added value for TV buys, or are people warming to the idea of buying digital content to cover off devices?
Okay, there were a lot of questions there. So the one that connected with me the most was, do clients want it as added value?
Sure.
Of course they do, without a doubt. I mean, they still want digital as added value for our television buys. So it's hard to get clients to pay for something if they don't know what they're getting for it, right? So the measurement piece of it is important. Go back to the first part of your question.
Is this interesting to clients because it's social, or because it's digital with measurement?
It's interesting to clients because you can see the power that these people are having in this space. So people are choosing to interact with your brand. So whether it's Facebook fans or people talking about it or voting or whatever it is, we look at these as choice-based impressions, right? People who are seeking out to comment, talk, and engage with your brand, right? So that's why it's important to them, because these people have a lot of influence on other people. So that's why they're paying attention, and because it's getting to a scale that they need to pay attention to it.
So let me ask a follow-up question to that.
Yep.
How do you assign a value then to a tweet or a like or any of these interactions?
Yeah, I don't know that I have the answer to that. That's what we're trying to figure out. What is the value of that when you don't know how many people it's really reaching? I don't know the answer, but we're working on it.
Back here.
Hi. From the examples you gave and sort of like the interactions that you see and that you're trying to measure socially, it seems like this is all kind of dependent upon the programming being synchronously live, like happening at the same time, and a lot of people are seeing it at the same time. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, a lot of it happens live, people watching it. So you asking what happens in a DVR environment or when people aren't watching it at the same time? Is it as relevant to them?
That's where I was going.
Yeah. So yes and no. I think that the content creators are trying to figure out how to make sure that all of this works in a DVR environment so that it doesn't have to happen live. I mean, with the voting stuff, I mean, it has to happen within 2 hours, so it somewhat has to happen live. But there are other things that are being created that don't have to happen right within that hour time period, and that will allow you the couple of days to watch the show and be a part of it. So I think they understand that they need to create it in a way that it'll work in a time-shifted environment as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Back here.
Hi, how are you? My name's Matt. I think there's a number of folks here working in a sales capacity at Google, and I'd just be curious, maybe you could give us a little advice. I think social TV is probably a challenging sell because it feels somewhat unpredictable to a client. I guess both in the fact that you present them the idea of social and they may be like, well, what are they going to say about my brand? That's unpredictable. But also, I'm sort of used to putting in money and getting out impressions in a very linear, planned way throughout the course of the year, and that creates the things I expect to be created at the time I expect it. And so social TV has sort of both those, or social in general has both those risks to them. So when you're talking to risk-averse clients, we'd love to hear some of the tricks you use and some of the ways you sell.
So one of the things there's probably two really important things as we're selling these social TV programs through to our clients. The first is we know that it costs a lot of money to produce this additional content, right? It's not free to create all of this companion content to the programming, to build the relationships with GetGlue and all of these other things. But if the networks or content creators are going to try and pass all of those costs on to us, the advertiser, it's not going to happen because we don't really know what we're getting out of it. So there has to be a relationship there where we're in this together and we're trying to figure it out together. So that's one. And then the second thing is building in measurement where we can figure out whether this is really working or not. Because clients are only going to test for so long. And if we can't figure out if this is really working and having an impact on the brand, then they're not going to keep doing it. So I would say those are the two keys when we're what we need from a media partner as we're presenting these to our clients.
Cool. And just a quick follow-up. Do you find it to be predictable? Do you find the outcomes that you expect generally happen for clients, or do you find that it's sort of all over the board? What winds up happening in a social TV campaign?
I think some of it is predictable, and some things work and some things don't. I'm trying to think of a specific example of, like I think intuitively when we just this synced ad test, we haven't done it in reality yet. We're getting there with one of our clients and may do it in the very near future. I think intuitively we knew that a synced ad would bring it back up at least from that second group, right? Like if that's seeing a completely different ad, but we didn't know it was going to come back up as high as it did. So if we're learning things like that, those are going to be big wins to be able to measure things like that. So I would say intuitively a lot is reaffirmed, but we're definitely learning and finding things that aren't what we expected.
Thank you very much.
Hi. First, I have a couple of thoughts on TV versus social media that I'm gonna your feedback on. I think one of the reasons why TV will stay powerful for a long time because I think it delivered the content in a very scheduled way and a centralized way, whereas social media is very real time, but the information is also very scattered and very chaotic. And so when people are consuming the project in the information in a very segmented way, people are still looking for a real live event, almost in a way that they say, I know that on Sunday night at 9 p.m. that I can watch The Walking Dead, and then I can have some event I can talk about. So it basically serves as the social needs of people want to get it together, but social media wouldn't be able to provide that. Do you think that's...
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the way Mike and I talk about it is TV has always been social, It's just now you can talk about it instantly, right? So before you used to go into work the next day and you have that water cooler, right? It was a water cooler show, those NBC comedies, Seinfeld or whatever. You would talk about it with your friends the next day. We talk about social media now is your virtual water cooler, right? You have the ability to talk to people about it right then in that moment, or within a period of time, about the experience that you're having or have just had. So I don't think it's a huge shift in behavior, which is why I don't think television is dying, because people have always behaved this way. Now they just have a different outlet to do it, a more instant outlet to do it.
Right. So that leads to my second question, which is when it comes to implementing the social media content, do you think the agencies are shifting of updating real time and to say deliver the content almost the same way as how TV deliver content? Like every Tuesday I'm gonna post this kind of content every Wednesday. Do you think that will be some of the best practice they will do, or?
I don't know, because we hear so much about content needing to be on demand and moving away from a schedule. So I don't get the sense that that the content is being created and delivered on a schedule in the digital space. So I'm not sure that it's going to be created that way, because I think that they want people to be able to access it whenever they want to access it. But I think you're right. I mean, I think there's this reassurance in knowing, that there is a television schedule and people know when things are going to be on, and they set their DVRs, or they watch it on VOD, or they watch it on Hulu or a full episode player within a certain amount of time, because they want to be able to talk about it and experience it with someone else. So I'm not sure that digital is going to be on that same schedule.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think it will eventually, and I think that's what YouTube is trying to do.
Yeah.
They're trying to mark what TV is doing and have a set schedule, set channel, and I think that's how media is always evolving. At first, start very
It makes it
chaotic.
easier to find.
Yeah, like how TV channels used to start one channel with every program, then you have different content for different industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my last question, I promise that's the last one.
Okay, sure.
So I think for branding, it's a lot of related to how emotionally the consumer will be bonded to the brands.
Yep.
And when it comes to social media, I think it's still in a very early stage that it can really impact how people or emotionally perceive the brand. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's when I was talking about before, you can have a big impact on how people perceive your brand. So we need to pay attention to what people are saying, and make sure we're marketing appropriately to them, to at least create an environment for them to talk positively about your brand.
Do you have any specific measurement that you can use to measure against how emotionally that impact on the brands and the consumers?
How measurement for
like
how?
what kind of measurement that you're using to measure against how emotionally that the information can have influence on the brands when it comes to social media?
So we're working on putting those kinds of research tools in place to be able to figure out what kind of impact that social conversation is having on our brands. So we're working through that now. I'm not sure what all the companies are that we're using to get there, but there's a lot of companies in this space that are measuring what people are saying, and we just need to put it together in a way that it's usable for our clients.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think we have a final question before we have to wrap up.
I'll just wrap it up. Actually, you had a lot of my questions too, but so I have a new one. I'm sure it's probably referenced in your book, but since we're here in the home of Google, I'm just curious your perspective on YouTube as a social tool, how that ties into the whole TV dynamic, and how valuable it is or isn't.
YouTube in terms of how they're creating programming now, or the distribution?
Really more for brand building and brand association with the content.
Yeah, that's a good question for Mike, and he's not here to answer it. So, I mean, I think YouTube is valuable as a distribution for content, the YouTube channels and branded channels as a distribution for the content we're creating. So, I mean, I think it's very valuable. It's obviously has tremendous reach, so we need to make sure that we're using it in the right way. I do think, I'm not sure this quite answers your question, but I do think from a content standpoint, what they are doing now with creating content and trying to compete with television programming is going to be interesting to watch, to see if people want to view programming and are willing to experiment and test out that programming to gain some traction and some scale. So YouTube's a valuable platform. I'm not
good
sure
to hear.
that quite answers your question, but
It's a good
next
quote,
time we'll
right?
bring
Yeah, exactly.
next
Gotta
time
take
we'll
that.
bring Mike and he'll answer that one for you.
Well, Stacey, thank you so much. The book is Social TV. We have the lovely author here, and it's really a terrific book. I've read it from cover to cover. It's a good resource not only for folks in the media business like ourselves, but even for anybody to get have them basically understand how TV is really growing and what once TV was this fantastic medium, and then it got beat down into this traditional standpoint. It truly is a new medium. And there's so many more outputs for it. But terrific book. Get yourself a copy. If you need to find it, just email me at my LDAP, rcberto @google.com. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you.